All right, for all you Sunnyvale Jets out there watching, this is the legendary Adrian Stanga, who was my principal when I was a freshman in high school in 1964. Adrian, tell people how you're doing.
Well, still doing fine, Malcolm. Thank you for asking.
Just going back in time, you were born in what,
1922.
Oh my gosh, what year? I mean, what month?
December 5th. And my father died in 1926 when I was 4 years old in Abita Springs, Louisiana.
So that's where you were from, Louisiana?
Yes, I'm very proud of it.
So what elementary, middle school, high school?
Well, I have a very diversified life. During the Great Depression came on later on in 1932. But during that interim, from my birth until then, it was very difficult living. My father left my mother with 4 little children, of whom I was the youngest, and that's why you think I'm so spoiled. There were 4 of us. My oldest brother was 9, so there's 4 or 5 year gap between the first one and the last one. And went to school there in Abita Springs, and my mother remarried, and about 1931, and he was a furrier and would bought the muskrat, a very valuable fur, in the bayous of Louisiana.
The muskrats?
Yes.
Wow.
The skin was very valuable, and the fur. And so I was the youngest, so my mother took me with him to the swamp land of Louisiana, and it was quite an experience. Because my job, I was in the 4th grade, my job was to take the wet furs, they skin them right at the bayous and throw the carcass back into the bayou for the fish's food. And so I never shall forget that after school I'd come home and there was a drying room next to where I slept. And my job was to take the rats and skin them inside out and put them hooks on the dry. And it's in my nostrils to this day. I can smell the stench of those furs drying.
So basically you didn't have any muskrat love?
No.
Musical reference.
Yeah.
So advancing on, so then did you complete high school in Louisiana?
A Great Depression hit. My mother had little money left in the bank. When the banks were closed and everything was lost, and times were very, very difficult in 1932 on, and I went to high school, to a private school for 2 years. I don't know who paid that bill, but then I went to high school in Lyon High School in Covington, Louisiana, and because my mother was deceased at age 15, 16.
Oh my goodness.
And we're living with an aunt for about a year, and I thought life had to be better than this, and that should I impose upon her for the rest of my life, or at least until she was quite elderly. And so I dropped out of high school as a junior to look for a job. And I hitchhiked from New Orleans to Miami, Florida, before I found a job in a sweatshop paying 30 cents an hour. And it was very hard labor, unloading sacks of sugar, corn, and rice and beans out of the freight cars. And then life had to be better than this, so I went to Miami School of Aeronautics, where I studied for an airplane mechanic. And so before I left, the older workers at the sweatshop said, "Kid, we're going on a strike. And I said, I'll go with you. And they said, no, you're the only income you have, and you're alone. You don't have to come out with this. And so I did. After 2 weeks, I said, my conscience got the better of me, and these men have married and have children. And so I walked out. It got ugly with pickets, out pickets, fighting off the strike breakers. And then I went to the union, and concurrently, I was going to night school, and the war, just before the war broke out for America, I was working in an aircraft industry. Soon I became a lead man. Most of the men working with me were much more knowledgeable than mechanics than I. But it was a great opportunity, and from that I was drafted into the Air Force and got the same work in school for the Air Force that I'd had at the Miami School of Aeronautics. And so I was then drafted into the Air Force and spent, I'm trying to get fast through this.
I love the potential jet references that you're making
That's
here. You started off in aeronautics, and am I blowing your big line coming up here?
Aside from that, my early life gave me the foundation, I think, to guide me for what I want to become.
Fantastic.
And that is work with people. I found in the Air Force, as well as the school I went to, that I was not an objects man. I found that I was a people's man. As a result, based on my early life training, the need for work, the need to help people, it developed my personality to work with people, which I did the rest of my life. And I'm very grateful, and particularly to Sunnyvale High School, where our students came pretty much from the working class, and I'm so familiar with that, because at one time I didn't have work, so I'm very familiar. It made a very close relationship.
You definitely have a sympathy there.
Yeah, sensitive, yes, that's right. So I was drafted 3 years in the service, and was stationed at Savannah, Georgia, where we were processing bombers to be sent to Germany and North Africa. And the only bombers, the planes would be flown in from factories at night, and we would work to give last checks before they were sent to Europe, to England, or North Africa. And it was a wonderful experience. And we processed 5,000 bombers, 25s, 26, 17s, and 24s, 6,000 in a year and a half. Shows you how America, who had no military defense, came to life and got behind our government to make us be able to do that within a couple of years. We were desperate, defensively, to be attacked, but we got together as one. And that's been my motto ever since, the spirit of oneness. And because I think we all should be together. Neighbors need neighbors, countries need countries, states need states. We never accomplished that fantasy I had, that even countries would need countries, but that's not happening, and they never will. When I got to California, they sent me to Chico, California, where I made a lovely co-ed, graduate of Chico State, and we married very happily. And then from there I went to Chico State, where I received my first wife was a talented musician, a recital pianist, and she was very helpful. And I made up my high school diploma, incidentally, in the Air Force, the USAFI, United States Air Force Institute, where they take people like me to make up the high school diploma or whatever, which was great because I got the diploma and was able to be enrolled at Chico State.
So you were a wildcat.
Yeah, still am.
You still are literally a wildcat.
It turned out that when I graduated, I did 5 years and 3.5, and I was married, started to have children, and I knew I had to go to work. And so upon graduation, I took a teaching job in Redding, California, where Carolyn Buzzcycle was.
Miss Buzz.
Miss Buzz. And she was a student of mine in 1950. And what a wonderful person she is. And to this day, when ex-students come up to me, the first thing I ask, how's Miss Buzz? And so that's the way that was. And I became the president of the Chico State Alumni the following year, which made me in contact with a lot of the old-timers of Chico State. Later I got the master's degree there, and that's the end of my college career. It's another turn after that into my later life.
So how did you get to Sunnyvale High School?
Now, I was teaching at Redding for 2 years, and my son became pretty ill, and our doctors advised us to bring him down to the Bay Area, where he could get closer attention to the medical field. And while down here, I found a job at the last minute because I resigned from Redding on August 15th. School opened in 2 or 3 weeks. Luckily, I found a job at Fremont Union High School District in Sunnyvale. And at that time, Fremont was only one school, and we had about 1,000 students and about 35 teachers. To go advance it a little bit, I retired from teaching education in 1996, and at that time, to show you how the valley advanced so rapidly, population and industry, that in that 25 years, we grew from 1 high school to 7 high schools with 10,500 high school students. So I was part of that growth and became principal in 1960 to 66. So I went to Stanford on a fellowship for a year, sponsored by the Ford Foundation in Stanford and Fremont District, to become up to date on modern trends in education. I was to be trained to be principal of the Model School of America, which was to be Homestead at that time. And well, things happened, which is too much to talk about here.
Things happen.
Yeah.
There's a statement.
Yeah, so they called me from Stanford to be the assistant superintendent of the district in charge of the entire instructional program. That is the curriculum, instruction, and certificated personnel, which I found to be most interesting because my idea or concept of education is diversity and individualize as much as possible, which I tried to do when I was principal at Sunnyvale High.
We were all about diversity.
Yeah, we made some new introductions to the curriculum, and that's one reason why Stanford selected me for the progress we're making to modernize the education, using new concepts, not losing old. For example, we thought of teacher training and flexible scheduling. For example, for students in biology, if 50 minutes is excused for the next class. What can a student do to get rid of the depth? In a biology class, just 50 minutes instruction to get all the equipment out, it's time to leave.
Yeah.
So by flexible sketching, that means a major change in class arrangements. And maybe 2 or 3 hours for biology to do the lab work and all. And that means changing the math schedule to accommodate. So we did quite a bit of that, well, not enough, but at Sunnyvale. And also we believed in the teachers having more flexibility.
What years were you talking about with the more
when I
flexible?
was in Sunnyvale,
Yeah.
I got rolling on it around 1964
Right.
and
We
65.
just happen to have the 1964 yearbook
Oh,
right
you
here
do?
that we can make reference to. You know, I post videos on Facebook and ask people questions I should ask you, and one person said, how you view changes in the school systems today as to what it was when you were in Sunnyvale in the 60s through, well, you were there through the 60s, yeah.
That's an excellent question. That's what I've been trying to say.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I'm glad you asked it. It gives me more opportunity to
This
talk
is my David Susskind role, for those of you.
Yeah.
Phil Donahue? No.
Yeah. Well, that's really...
By the way, I have to say something. For a man of 90, how many years, Adrian? 93?
You know, I think I'm 62, and I'm actually 92.
Today you're 62, but for however old you are, we know you're probably 92. Your verbal acuity and your memory skills are way better than most people I hang around with. So I will commend you for that, and I do appreciate you sitting down and because people have been asking. I would love to hear from Adrian. But
well, thank you, and it's a great pleasure to do this because not only gives me an opportunity to say hello to that great class of 1960, I can name quite a few of you to whom I've been in contact. But to the other point, that's my modus operandi is to change the system. Not destroy the system.
yeah,
Maybe my changes might have destroyed it.
yeah. Don't throw out the baby.
But the team of teachers were, I first had some problems when I was made principal because as vice principal, don't want to get specific on this, but I noticed that the third year teachers get tenure. And without mentioning any names, I felt I learned a lot as vice principal about certain teachers who were up for tenure. And that's where we should start.
Yeah.
And teacher tenure, and I was very difficult, but I was the one that had to release several teachers who were up for tenure. And that's when staff utilization is one of my main thrusts. And that is, as in teaching, why should 3 periods, 3 different classes teach U.S. history at the same time in the same era? So then we got the notion of breaking that down so they could get more individualized instruction by combining them. The 3 would make a team, 3 teachers, and they would select who's going to give the lectures on certain topics, which releases 2, because what the lecture can be given by 1 instead of 120.
Sure.
And so there's releasing the 2, that gives them time to work well with individuals, prepare for another gigantic lecture, but more importantly, they can break that class down to where they could take a group at a time, maybe the other 2 teachers, and work on special individualized projects. And that concept would hold true with almost any subject matter, particularly the academics. And so that's what we set out to do, and that's what I did when I went back to the district from Stanford after a year. And I was able to persuade the acting superintendent, whom I knew very well. He was the deputy superintendent before Mr. Stevens, the very well-respected man who retired. He's the one who was responsible for organizing those other 5 high schools. He was, in fact, before he retired, he established the land. He didn't use eminent domain, but he was able to get 25 acres out of the Orchardists and willing to give up their land, of course, at a price. Yeah. And so he's the one, Mr. Stevens, that developed that whole Fremont district before he retired. And so the first thing I do was to get teachers involved with the district office. There's quite a dividing line, a demarcation between administration and teaching staff. And later on it got really separated because teachers got in unions and the district office played another role, which I'm definitely in contrast with. Because as I began as a teacher, I had experience in the union for military, and I thought teaching profession should not be a union. That is above having a fight constantly to get wages. But apparently I was proved wrong. Because
teachers didn't get into teaching for the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I have a dear friend who went to Santa Clara U, and a lot of the people he went to college with went off and made money. Yeah. And he chose, he called it the honorable profession, as being a teacher and an administrator.
That's an excellent
And I just so admire this gentleman, as I do you. I had a question. So people did ask me to ask you certain things, and one of them was, how did teachers deal with how they taught the subject of the Vietnam War? And his quote was, you were at a parent-teacher meeting and you said, this is a quote of you, some of your sons are going to be drafted and fight and possibly die in a country that many of you can't find on a map. Because they were upset about this teacher being very honest in his teaching about the Vietnam War. What were your feelings about the war and about how it was dealt with from a teacher's standpoint?
I remember it well. And I remember the class of '58, our first graduating class. Some of them, the seniors, would talk to me. I was also the senior boys counselor and the dean of boys at the time, and about the Vietnam. And very patriotic, excuse me, very patriotic young men. I remember very clearly, and particularly certain particular conversations I had with them. And they were gung-ho about going in to defend their country, to fight for their country. But they had certain apprehensions about it, as would be natural. But they willingly, some of them didn't finish their senior year that went into it. And I was so terrible to see that war begin. And some of our fellas came back, some of them crippled, and some of them I meet to this day. And some of them now were in the class of '66, who spent 3 or 4 years over there, and mangled, some of them. But it was a great, very time to show exhibit your belief in what democracy is and how we should defend it, keep it that way. But at the same time, the way it turned out has been very, very sad experience. And last thing on that, to this day, when I'm 14 million American who fought, were drafted into World War II, we hear a lot about the heroes of World War II. I can't help but think about the heroes of Vietnam.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
They have never been dealt with or showed by the public appreciation forgiving their lives and their bodies mangled. And this kind of bothers me because it's not fair. And one reason for that neglect is the American society could hardly accept giving up that war. In other words, maybe defeated, giving it up because they saw they were fighting a losing battle. And they might want to put that under the rug and not show appreciation to our Vietnam heroes.